mic down very quietly, and just lay it down very gently, or else it's going to clump and be heard without.
I think that's enough. Our meeting. Gee, isn't that enough? You're doing it for so cool. Pull it down a little bit so we can have our See how loud it is?
I think it's time now. I am Ruth Harriet, daughter of Jane, who died when I was 10, granddaughter of Harriet, who died before I was born, and granddaughter of Mamita. We all go back to our foremothers, though we often deny this. Let me tell you about Marmita, born in Kiev, the Ukraine. She came to Ellis Island when European immigrants to the United States were processed by officials early in this century who couldn't cope with foreign names. My grandmother, Mamita, was given the name Minnie at Ellis Island and carefully traced it on the report cards of 5 children. It was all the English she could ever write. When her oldest child, my mother, died at 30, she took a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old and traced Minnie on our report cards and on all those forms to get legal guardianship and state aid to feed us. She crocheted scarves for the social workers, begged clothes in camps, and within a slum kept a shining house. Half crazed by her daughter's death and endless poverty, she cried, screamed, had no patience with my brother, and even threatened me. Too good though I was. But every spring, somewhere in that slum, she stole lilacs to put upon my dresser and trace her love forever on me. It is only recently that I wrote that poem. I have just begun to understand my grandmother as I myself have aged, and I'll be 65 in the fall. I emphasize as I see what it is to be a woman whose options are limited by age, gender, roles, and fate. One morning last year, I searched in my grandmother's button jar to match a button. Grandma gave me the job shortly before her death at age 87, decades ago. As I sifted through the buttons, I realized how old some of them were. I also had visions of her life. They were buttons cut from clothes that she sewed for me and my brother from necessity, and for her 5 children before that, from friends' hand-me-downs. I remember she sewed late at night, exhausted after her day's chores. Yet women like her had been undervalued and not counted as part of the labor force because they worked at home. In the jar were military buttons cut from the uniforms of her 2 sons with tears and relief after the wars. There were several glittering buttons sewed from the few good dresses she had that she had bought for graduations and for her children's weddings. Suddenly, I, no craftsperson, needed desperately to make something from my grandmother's buttons. Though my college students' papers waited, I began in a compulsive, even frenzied way to string the buttons on strong thread. Without forethought, I strung the buttons in a random way and then tangled them together, as my grandmother's life was strung and tangled, not by her design or by her desire, but by the needs of others. In the same way, I have strung together this play, telling the stories of women today, some of whom can speak for themselves, others who could not, and still others who have been silenced.
Pulled by others' ties and even by my own, in between waking and sleeping, in between sleeping and waking, halfway from birth to death, childhood and old age, I glimpse my strengths and weaknesses, courage and fears, desires and limitations, joys and sorrows, hope and despair, fear and faith.
I'm between wanting marriage and wanting singleness, wanting children and wanting my time.
I am in the middle of lovers and former lovers, siblings, parents and my children, my husband and my children, and his children, his parents and mine. The empty nest and the refilled, children and their spouses, children and their children, job and home, work and pleasure, work and more work, supervisor and supervisee, my husband's retirement and my renaissance, friends and foes, friends and other friends, adulthood and studenthood, the generations before and those ahead, home and world.
I am torn between ambition for my daughter and knowledge of the risks and costs, the rewards and cruelties awaiting as women assert and are punished.
I am between anxiety and confidence, activity and passivity, assertion and depicts, trust and mistrust, hope and hopelessness, dreams and nightmares, love and hate, menstruation and menopause, triumph and defeat, growth and stagnation, nurturing and resenting, hurting and healing, self-interest and selflessness, sensuality and celibacy, spirituality and intellectuality, dependence and independence, my thin and fat selves, relaxation and stress, humor and pathos, myself and others, and parts of myself.
I am in the middle of war and peace, radicalism and conservatism, private concerns and political action, activism and retreatism, feminism and backlash, convenience and the environment, my country and universality.
I am a woman in between, in the middle, pulled by others' ties, and even by my own. I am a woman in the middle, in between, wanting to help and wanting help, happy, discontented, free, fettered, fearless, frightened, frank.
I am a woman in between who I was and whom I will yet be. I am me, groaning, groping, growing, skimming the waters, testing the waters, swimming against the tide, sinking, surfacing, making splashes, getting wet and wetting others.
I am in the middle of a new ocean, but will not drown. My ambivalences will allow us to rest upon with other women between our thrusts toward a shore as yet uncharted and even denied. I am a woman in between, in the middle, pulled by others' ties, and even by my own.
This poem applies to me. It is hard to be a mother. Who will feed the feeders? Who will nurture the nurturers? Who will counsel the counselors? And when?
The poem applies to me. It is hard to be a daughter. My mother is a mirror of what I do not wish to be. I want no ambivalences. What if darkness fear I, if I know no fear? What if weakness hear I, if I will not hear? What if pain or sorrow, if I close my eyes? Need I fear tomorrow?
Dream on, little wise one. Deny your waking senses. Life, my darling, will silence your defenses.
What a pain you are. You remind me of those homeless, pitiful bag ladies wandering around the streets carrying their rags and bags.
We are all bag ladies, or becoming them. Nothing lasts. Not love, not the beloved. Even mountains crumble. Only the ocean waits to catch our tears. Bags of memories tell us who we were, before we were wise. The bags burden us. Carrying around our losses, we stumble, clutching our unfreedom against all threats or promises. It's all we know. It's all we have. It's all we are.
You sure feel sorry for yourself. You make me feel guilty for growing up. You make me want to get away from you even more. You should try harder. You sound like a martyr. You suggest that you turn anger into art, a crust of bread into bread pudding. Old chickens are tough. They survive the axe. Even bag ladies manage. Why not you?
I do not like who I am. I tried to find new roles. Men my age prefer you. Employers prefer you too. They seem to say you can't trust older women. They put philodendron on the file cabinets and dump real coffee grounds into the wastebasket. They hang posters in the washrooms. Next thing you know, they'll be asking for a raise, saying that they made the place feel like a place. You might like to be here if they weren't there, looking down their noses when you cheat or lie to the customers.
I think you exaggerate this age discrimination bit. Older women aren't the only ones who have problems. Young women have troubles too.
I know. Before we're accustomed to our bodies and our minds, they're after them. We nurture before we're comfortable in our own skins. Then, when we know the joys of flesh and mind combined, we're eager to meet the world, but it has then lost interest.
I sure know what you mean. Guys are after us all the time. Being young and pretty isn't always a bargain. You have to send them off. It must be hard, though, when they aren't there to fend off. I worry sometimes. Will this hair turn gray and dry? Will my Prince Charming turn into a frog? Should I even worry about such trivia? I went to Seabrook in New York to demonstrate, but they didn't really hear. Will there be a world left for me to grow old in? Should I have children? Will they be able to grow up?
Are you really that discouraged?
It's not like the 70s, Mom. The gentle bearded young men have gone into corporate offices or are driving taxis toward the graveyard of their dreams for social change. The long-haired women in ragged jeans have cut their hair in hopes and joined the secretarial or data processing pool. The libraries are being boarded up, the teachers sent from the schools, public transport is in trouble, public welfare is dead, and social justice also. Only munitions prosper.
And I thought that you and your friends had it all. I think it was simpler for my mother, your grandmother. God knows she worked hard for me and for others, and she suffered sexism, but at least she thought things might be better. She believed in progress. My generation is discouraged. Your generation believes in doom.
It's not that bad. Sometimes I worry about the world, but mostly I am concerned with me. I guess I really think the world will go on. In fact, the major problem I feel is fear of failure. Not measuring up and in some way failing my standards. I feel pressure to do something special, something definite and concrete with my life. Grandma didn't think she had to do it all and have it all. And maybe you didn't either, and maybe that was easier.
Well, I used to think I shouldn't expect too much out of life except to be a good wife and mother and friend and to be good to others generally. Listen to how that feels now. Sometimes when I'm exhausted by hard work, working for others, I refuse to rest. I remind myself that people in concentration camps dropped in exhaustion, that refugees or POWs walked or rode to death. I identify with the wretched. And then I make myself wretched, punishing myself for imagined guilt, driving myself, serving others, worrying about them. Perhaps I'm an exaggeration case, but we share this woman syndrome. We were taught it, not just by our mothers and their mothers. I deserve better. Daughter, you deserve better. You deserve to rest when we're tired, to eat when we're hungry, good, carefully chosen food, not just the cheap leftovers. You deserve self-love and being loved. I deserve my choices and first choice. I deserve a decent and humane society. I deserve success and rewards. I deserve to trust myself the way others do trust me. And I deserve to forgive myself the way I do forgive others. I deserve not to be stepped upon and to cry out when I hurt. I deserve righteous indignation to stop making excuses for other people. Maybe to start making a few for myself. I deserve the seemingly trivial. I deserve new clothes, not always bought on sale. I deserve fresh sheets and fragrant flowers. I deserve, you deserve, not to have to do absolutely everything for absolutely everybody. Although I will continue to have a concern for the wretched, I have a right to happiness. I must take care of myself as I continue to give to others, including you, my daughter. If I can only nurture others, if I cannot nurture myself, if I'm tired all the time, what am I teaching my daughter? What do we teach all our daughters and all of our sons? How much social change is needed? How much unlearning we need to do to claim the joy that is our right, our need, our survival.
I understand. I'm glad you feel we deserve. I'm sorry I'm so hard on you. You've seen I'm really scared, though I've been afraid to show it. And I need to push you away so I can be free. If only I could look at us now, here, standing as independent travelers who shared a trip, now pasted neatly in an album of casual reminiscence. If only I no longer waited to reenact that journey, exposed and small as I was once, bringing you my infant hurts and blaming me for them. If only we could snap the cord that pulls a raw red furrow deep across your open heart and mine. If only we could break that hateful rope, and yet not make of it a noose. To hang that tenderness which once was what I grew upon. That you and I might compromise, end this present bitter journey, embark upon some new and separate ones, keeping our luggage light and apart, greeting each other as we pass, and welcoming our new companions freely.
I know you must take your journey to a place where I cannot go or choose. Even though I try to give you a map, you refuse it. Find that place. Find the finding. Sometimes I mourn my little child gone, and I try to keep you that way. Please grow and go with as little pain as possible for both of us, and with my love and my pride.
So now we stand against the door, reliving history once more. I shall be as free as you would have me free, and arms enough to bear the pain of parting, and leaving you, go on with hope to see this present tense of life now starting. Please know your gifts of life and love. Our maps I take along. But I must know by day and night that I am I for once, and I am strong. Mom, what will you do now?
I do not know. I am a woman in the middle, in between, pulled by others' tides, and even my own. I am in the middle of a new ocean, but I will not drown. My ambivalences will be islands for others, other women, and for you, daughter, to rest upon. Between our thrusts towards a new shore, as yet uncharted, and even denied. But there is a shore.
I am a woman, in between who I was and who I shall yet be. I am me, groaning, groping, growing, skimming the waters, testing the waters, swimming against the tides, sinking, surfacing, making splashes, getting wet, and wetting others, including you, Mother. And I will not drown.
We are women,
In between, in the middle of a troubled world, pulled by others' tides, and even by our own. Remember when we sat and played button, button, who has a button? Well, you all just heard my story. Jennifer, you're next to the oldest. You take the button.
So it is my turn. Who am I? I am what I do. They pay me to be somebody, and that is why my work is really me. And if you don't believe that, you haven't been brought up right. You must be a foreigner or one of those people left over from the early 70s who thought we were going to find ourselves someplace besides the office or on the couches.
Is that how you function?
Functionaries can only function at functions. Empty rooms empty them of roles. Terrified, they function to create functions. Functions thus are functional when empty. Functionaries are empty, though functioning. Functionaries deserve pity for terror. Who today is not a functionary? Functioning is, after all, functional.
It sounds pretty grim.
I get by, but work beside your bed, make lists, contract your services, do the extras. Fill every hour, tell people you are always busy, and be that way. If you fall asleep in the sun, drink coffee and run.
I guess it has worked for you. You're a success.
Yes, I suppose so, but the world's overripe plums splatter into weary hands, which hurl them on the ground like bloody, useless things. These are not the fruits desired. It is not enough to be admired. Forget I said that. This is an off day for me, and this group is where I let down. I really am lucky to have a decent job these days. I tell myself, so what if there's no Mr. Right? You had better settle for work. Love is for the young, the blonde, the light, the lucky, the others. You are a workhorse, pulling weights, piling weights, putting weights upon yourself. Learn to love your work or talk a good line. Maybe someone will pat you, pet you. Good horsey.
You're not missing that much if you don't marry. I read somewhere that single women are the happiest, healthiest women in America. Marriage is better for men than for women.
Yes, Alan, but the grass is always greener elsewhere. You already talked, so if you don't mind, I'll give the button to Mary.
Who am I? I was a wife for 30 years. One day my husband decided he didn't want to be married anymore to an older woman, though he was, of course, 4 years older than I. I've always thought it had something to do with the fact that his company passed him over for promotion. He was stuck in a dead-end job he hated while younger fellows were zooming past him. Anyway, he had affairs with women much younger than himself. Thank God our children were grown and out of the house. Finally, he made one woman half his age pregnant, and he married her after our divorce. Now they have 2 babies, and I suppose he feels important at home, if not at work. As for me, I remember going shopping shortly after he left. I kept walking around the market without putting anything in my cart. Suddenly I realized I didn't know what I liked to eat. For years I had been buying what he liked and what the children liked, and that is what I ate. I didn't even know my own tastes in food. It seems to me I'd never even eaten when I was hungry, but always when somebody else was. How was I going to make a life for myself? Though I was pretty depressed that Sunday, I went to a singles brunch I saw advertised in the newspaper. I got all dressed up. I suppose I hoped to find a man. Well, the woman who ran the club came up to me and said, "Please don't come back. You're too old for this group." I looked around. The men were my age or even lots older. I was devastated. Of course I had gray hair then. I've colored it since.
What did you do besides color your hair?
I cried a lot. At first it was utter despair. Leaving the suburb and wifehood for a cheaper city apartment, I moved my plants in first so something would greet me. The first morning I awoke at dawn to see the rats ballet a strange and frenzied circle beneath my window and said, "There are worse things than rats." Strange things were happening to me. In what is one to believe? The city screams at you, and you scream back, finding your voice in someone else's shrill cry.
I guess you were scared.
Yes, and more than that. I envied those women whose husbands tucked them into cars and beds and paid their dinner checks. My so-called freedom felt like unconnectedness. I thought someday I will stay in bed forever, and no one will care or even know. I hated married women and was foolish enough to think they were all happy. Once I even wrote an imaginary letter to a suburbanite. You with your small mouth and long tennis legs, living with antiques,
a husband, and roses, don't know what it is to live alone on women's tiny wages that buy starches and roaches. Uncordially yours.
You had a right to be angry, I think.
Yes, and I wanted revenge. Before I saw my former husband again, I wanted to be loved, or at least desired and possessed, so that the creeping mildew of soul and body would not be intensified by the sight and smell of him, my lost and only lover, of a long and wasted life destroyed by his rejection. I covered up my pain with bravado. I thought, not wanting to turn to salt, I won't look back. Salt is tears. Tears are acid rain, and acid rain corrodes. I told myself, there are other fish in the sea, and I will fry them. There are other rocks on the shore, and I will throw them. There are other men in the world, and I will try them. But it didn't work. There were a few nibbles, but I didn't land any fish. I didn't know how lonely I was until I met him. I said, I am divorced. He said, his loss is some other man's gain. I answered too honestly, there is no other man, and hoped there might be. He was silent then, and forever after.
Yes, men are often afraid of getting involved. I know how you felt to be rejected.
Do you? Humiliating to wait at 50 for a call, for a word, for a kiss from a man hardly known, pushing aside proven women, fine friends, to chase his scent, knowing it is better to wait for a call never coming than not to wait or want at all.
Do you still feel that way?
No, at least not often. I accept my singleness. It happened rather suddenly. Once passing a certain place, I joyously contemplated being there, then realized it was the sort of place my husband and I had often been together. For the very first time, I really knew what all those legalities had failed to teach. My marriage was as dead as my youth, and all my mourning and seeking would not bring them back. Since then, I've gained strength. Joining this support group has helped. It was good I did, because I had a setback when my boss fired me to hire a young, pretty secretary. We will work hard for low wages, gratefully, but they much prefer our daughters and even granddaughters. The unwanted cringe, our backs ache, our eyes dull. We even stop thinking we are worth hiring.
I remember you were pretty depressed then. We had to help restore your confidence. We nagged you to get some training for a better job.
It wasn't easy, but I did take the courses, and you all encouraged me through them and through the awful job search. You, Jennifer, gave me a good lead that led to a new job. It's lucky I changed jobs, because at my new place there are other women alone. Doing things with them helps me cope with the Noah's Ark syndrome. They are still coming 2 by 2 off the ark. Hostesses do not invite unescorted single women, divorcees, or even widows, expecting they will rape husbands, steal homes, or worst trauma of all, mean an odd number at table. What kind of orgies need such pairings?
You make me feel terrible. I'm so embarrassed. It's true I haven't often included my widowed women friends when my husband and I invite our couple friends over. But I really thought the singles would be uncomfortable. It isn't that I didn't want them. As a matter of fact, sometimes when I do ask one, she refuses to come because she thinks she would be the only single. It's a two-way street. Well,
I'm sorry I interrupted, but I just had to say that. I was wondering, did you finally get used to the city?
It was hard that first winter. I didn't think I would make it, but I did. I rushed to the ocean during the February thaw to find dried seagrass waving tall and golden, undefeated by the storms. There by the shore, I danced with the grass, exulting at my strength to bear aloneness. Shouting to the grass, "We have weathered the winter, you and I. We are kin. We are kin. We are kin." I felt proud of coping. I have learned to blow the horn, threaten landlords, utility companies, and beater maids, use public parks, thrift shops, and free clinics, insult insulters, ignore accosters, trust strangers when feasible, see rainbows in the gutters, find in alleys parking spaces, boxes for bookcases, wildflowers, even furniture. Now I sleep through neighbors' parties, drown out trucks with Beethoven, fix doorknobs, outwit pay toilets, swim at hotels, though not registered. A new city kid at 50 learns fast. Well, I'm sorry I took so long to tell my story. Virginia, here's the button.